Hey everyone, Aaron Stewart, Data Access Golf. Happy to be with you today. Got the golf playing. Everything's it looks lush out there for sure, right? Looks we got Mark Leishman getting a drop. Looks like. Anyway, Zach Sucher, amazing. Still 200 par so far today. Moving right along. Keegan Bradley 200 par. Brian DeChambeau throws down a 64 and moves up 52 spots to where he's tied for fifth now. So interested to see how it all shakes out. Patrick Lee looks like 200 par. So Patrick Cantlay's 500 par. Andrew Landry's 500 par. So really good scores out there today. It'll be fun to see how this thing shakes out. And we know this is one of the coolest tournaments because we know on Saturday, on Sunday, almost no lead is safe. Right, you've got Bubba Watson, I think's come back from 6 strokes down and 7 strokes down to win. I think there's been a few that have done that. I think Kevin Streelman, I came from I think it was probably 6 strokes back once to win one year. He went 7 birdies in a row or something. Anyway, it's really cool to have this tournament on. But I wanted to jump on really quickly. I'm going to go out and my daughter wants to go out and hit some range balls today, and we're going to work on her swing. It's been very interesting. We didn't get out much last year. Again, I talked about my injury and with my wrist, and it's like in golf, right? It's one of the injuries that you just cannot overcome. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter how many braces I wore. It didn't matter how many Advil I took. It just hurt so badly. I just couldn't do one darn thing with it. So I didn't play a lot of golf at all there, and worked on other aspects of my game that did not hurt. And when we went out and played on Wednesday night with the kids, my kids were fascinated by how well I was putting. And I did. I putt really well. I didn't have a par putt more than, say, a foot. And I hadn't been out playing much, but I still continue to practice here in the office. So they were asking me, like, Dad, how in the world is that possible? I mean, you haven't been able to play much, so how are you still doing so well with putting? Well, putting is, and so I wanted to touch on that and why I think that I have become a really good putter, and it has to do with a lot of things. So I sat down and started thinking through how in the world did it get to this point? Because I do remember, and I think I've shared this experience with you before, that my very first time out to Carmel, California, to Carmel Valley Ranch, where I worked with Fred Shoemaker, I was in a beginning group with him. And I mentioned that I got really frustrated because that group was full of a bunch of beginners. And I, at that time, was an 18 handicap, which, I mean, obviously isn't great, but at least I'd played golf since I was probably 8 years old with my grandpa, and there'd been times in my life when I'd been better and when I'd been worse, but at this particular time I was an 18 handicap. I wasn't playing a whole lot. I was a new father. I was trying to get some businesses off the ground, and so golf just wasn't a big part of my life, and I was trying to get back into it. Well, we were out on the putting green, and I remember I wasn't always a bad putter. My grandfather actually taught me a couple cool things that helped me to be a good putter. One of the best things he ever taught me was when putting, analyze and take a look at the break and then pick the highest spot of the break and putt to that. And then just let the ball sort of, and have the speed take it to that point and then die towards the hole. And that, for me, in my little young mind, made total sense. So that worked for me. I totally forgot that I used to putt like that for over a decade. I've gone back to thinking that way on some putts, especially with big breakers, and it helps immensely. So, Grandpa, you're brilliant. May you rest in peace. I can't wait to see you again. But yeah, Grandpa helped me so much with my putting. And then I kind of forgot it. And when I was out there with Fred at the Extraordinary Golf School in Carmel, I was not a confident putter. I didn't know. I was going cross-handed. I was long putt. I was trying anything to try to get it in the hole. And so we were out on the putting green practicing, and Fred Shoemaker's walking around talking to everybody and discussing how their putting stroke looks and what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish, right? He wants us to be intentional when we're practicing. He gets to me and he watches me putt for a few times. I know he's there. And I'm putting. I literally, it's probably a 10-foot putt, maybe 12, and I have not even touched the hole. I mean, I'm putting one after another and not even coming close. And so Fred pulls me aside. He doesn't pull me. He comes up next to me. He goes, so, Aaron, where's your target? And I'm like, well, obvious. It's a kind of an embarrassing question, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious there's a hole right there. And in golf, we putt balls into the hole. It's kind of the point of it. So I said, sort of, I guess I was probably a bit incredulous. And I said, well, it's the hole, right? It's right there, what? And Fred said, well, no, I don't think that is your target because you would have made one by now. Ouch, right? I mean, he's right. I'd putt 20, 25, 12 footers and hadn't made one. So yeah, terrible. I mean, that is some bad putting right there. So there was definitely a time when I met Fred that I was an awful putter, but I hadn't been my whole life. I just got into a bad place, and that can happen with putting. You can mentally get yourself into a bad place where you become a bad putter. But putting in and of itself is not a difficult motion, and it's actually, the motion part of it is actually the simplest part, I think. Reading the greens and understanding the terrain and how the ball will interact with, with pace and speed and break and uphill and downhill, that's more difficult. Actually getting that down, the stroke itself is actually quite simple. And so why we get so freaked out about it, I don't know. But so it wasn't during this time, but Fred helped me with a few things. He helped me connect with the target, which is, again, a beautiful way to putt. And he started picking out golf balls for me around the green, and they all had the little Nike swoosh on it. And he said, hit that Nike swoosh. And so I would putt with that as my target focused, and I would hit the ball. And I was taking into consideration the break as I was doing that. So naturally, I was able to kind of understand the break and the speed and all that just by being connected to the target. And that was his point, is that we are super brilliant inside, and we know how to react to targets. We know how to throw a ball at a target, make it land, somewhere near somebody's hands or whatever. And he'll do that and kind of show us how to do it. So naturally, we are just super talented when we are connected to a target. Our body knows how to react to that. And that's what he taught me at that particular time. As I went back subsequently, and I've been back, I can't even begin, I don't know, 50, 100 times, I don't know. I've been back to work with Extraordinary Golf many times with a lot of different coaches. But one of these times, and I got into this mastery program that I'm in this year again, and I can't remember, it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, somewhere in there. A lot of really wonderful people that I get to spend some time with, and we talk golf, we talk life, we talk a lot of things. But one of the books that we were given in preparation to one of it, and it goes over a summer. So one of the books that we were given, one of the very first mastery groups I was in, we were given a book called The Talent Code. And we were told to read this, and that we were going to be spending the summer discussing how this book works and how talent is formed inside of us. And it was really cool. I had a really good summer. That book spoke volumes to me. I have read it many times since. I go through that book to make sure that I'm learning properly. But what I took from that book, I was able to apply it to my putting stroke almost instantly. Okay, so I wanted to just break that down really simply, kind of give you an idea of the process that I went through, and maybe this will help you. So in the Talent Code, it discusses how all of us can learn to be talented at just about anything as long as we have we have expert coaching, as long as we have the motivation to do so, and as long as we are willing to do what they call deliberate practice. Okay, and it was this concept of deliberate practice. I'm already motivated. All of you are motivated to play good golf, as good as we possibly can. Okay, so the motivation for golfers typically isn't part of it. So in this 3-step process that you learn from the Talent Code, number 2 is motivation. Throw that one out. Nobody needs that in golf, right? We all want to get better. But we do need to have this idea of deliberate practice, and we do need to have this idea of expert coaches. Okay, and I obviously had this part taken care of with Extraordinary Golf and access to Fred Shoemaker, who was an expert in all things golf, right? So I had that part. So all I really had to focus on myself was this first section about deliberate practice. And what they mean by deliberate practice and what they teach in this book is that anybody who's a virtuoso or anybody who's become super good at anything has practiced in the right way. And that spoke volumes to me, because I've said it ad nauseum to you all about golf, and that is, golf is hard, golf is difficult, and we as amateurs don't have a gazillion hours to practice like the tour pros do, right? Who are bringing in, sometimes $5,000 an hour if they win a tournament, right? We don't have we don't have the time and the money resources to do all that they do. We don't have access to the technology. We don't have access to the coaches. We don't have access to the trainers. We don't have any of that. So we amateurs have to go about doing things a little bit different. So to me, I was like, okay, this is a problem that I need to solve. And so I fell back on my researcher background and kind of went into this thing where deliberate practice made a great deal of sense to me. It doesn't even need to make, it made sense to me because I knew it was right. And you see all these experts. One of the coolest stories they share about there is like Michelangelo, and how in Florence, Italy at the time, there was so many wonderful artists going on. And so was it just something in the water? I mean, is that how we had so many beautiful pieces of art being produced? And it didn't matter. It was sketches and frescoes and statues, and all kinds of stuff came out of that era in Italy and Florence. And so they, nature, nurture, what is it? They go and look at it. Well, at that particular time in Italy, you would have these apprenticeships. And so these young men would go in and work with a expert, a mentor, and they would lead them through and help them become very good at their whatever they chose to do, whatever their passion was, which is also a cool thing. But Michelangelo, he began his apprenticeship at the age of 6. And he learned all kinds of things: sketches, frescoes, painting, statues, all of that stuff. So by the time he got older, he had a wealth of information. He had the motivation, obviously, that was a big part of it. He had the coach, the mentor right there. And then he had this ability to practice deliberately. And what we mean by that is making sure that you are always pushing the limits of what you can understand, because there's this, anytime we do any activity, we have these neural processes that go on in our brain. And the more we use these neural processes, the more myelin is developed around these neural pathways. And the thicker and thicker that gets, the myelin gets, the more efficient the brain can send signals down to make these movements occur. Okay, so the more we do so this whole idea that practice makes perfect, it's really just a matter of thickening that myelin level, the myelin surrounding of these neural pathways, so that when the nerves fire, the electric pulse can go through super quickly, super efficiently, super precisely, and everything that's being communicated gets to exactly where it needs to be, and so we can precisely move the right way. Okay, and that can happen. I know we talk about subconscious and conscious. Subconsciously, we can do that much more quickly than we can consciously. Consciously, we get in the way of all this. That's a discussion for another day. But so when it came to putting, I thought, okay, so how do I deliberate practice? And so at first, I know I've shown you a lot of different drills and stuff that I use, but yeah, how do I control the face? How do I make sure that face is square? And so I would use those putting drills, and I would use these different tools to do it. Just a second. For example, this little guy. This is one of the most frustrating golf aids in the entire world. You lay it down and you putt to it. Excuse me. You lay it down and you try to hit it square. If you hit it a little open, it hits this first and it spins out and goes that way. If you hit it a little closed, it spins out that way, excuse me. If you hit it a little open, it hits this way and spins out this way. Just a big slicey putt or a big hooky putt, right? You have to hit them both at the same time, dead square, in order for this thing to roll straight. Okay, it is a miserably hard little guy. I hated him. I love him now, but he is super fun to practice your face with. So I had to learn to control my face. So what did I do? I started doing deliberate practice, meaning I started to move very slowly back and slowly back to see if I could tap this thing and get it to roll just a little bit perfectly square. And I continued to do that and then speed it up, speed it up, speed it up, speed it up, That was part of my deliberate practice, always pushing myself beyond what I was capable of doing, and it would spin out, and then I would work at that pace for a little while, and then I'd get it to 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, and now can I putt it across the entire room dead straight? And that's how I practiced my putting. That is deliberate practice. That is how it's done. So for us amateurs, when we want to practice and practice as efficiently as we possibly can, we need tools and devices that give us the feedback so we can correct ourselves. Okay, so there's devices like this that can do it, and then there's coaches that can do it. And that's the real, I guess, crux of this whole thing, is when we get into this deliberate practice mode, we need to make sure that the feedback we're getting is accurate. So whatever device you're using has to give accurate feedback. And then you can make the adjustments. And it's the making the adjustments that builds the myelin that I've talking about that increases the efficiency of those signals. So then I can speed up and hit this thing dead square harder and harder and faster. Okay, so that's the scientific way to practice. Be deliberate and then push your skill a little further. You develop a thicker layer of myelin around your neural pathways, and then when the nerves, the electric impulse fires from the nerves after being commanded by, the brain, boom. It's a very efficient and fast message that gets down to where it needs to be, and then we can be super efficient. And the cool thing about it is when we get it all built up and in place, we don't have to think about it anymore. It's second nature. Okay, but it takes that kind of practice to get there. So there's cool devices that give you feedback. And the other thing that we need to be careful with, so when you talk full swing, when you take all of that, that is how I became a good putter. I went through a very, very slow process of becoming a good putter. Now I can put this thing down and yeah, I'll blow it here and there. It's not perfect, but I'm far better than I ever used to be. And it's just because I have taken the time to build that process, that neural network in myself. So when I went back out to play after not playing for months, it took me one putt to kind of figure out what the greens were doing. And it was simple from that point forward. I didn't worry about my face to path. I didn't worry about my speed. And again, speed's something that you can go out and practice deliberately as well. A 1 footer uphill, a 2 footer uphill, and keep doing it until you get very precise. And again, building that neural pathway, that's insulated and ready to go. Okay. So the final part of this then is coaching and making sure that you have a coach that there's 2 types of coaches, and they talk about it in the Talent Code. You've got coaches that are really good at motivating you. And again, those are the rah-rah guys, right? That tell you you're awesome, that tell you you're great, that provide encouragement, that do all those things that we definitely need to hear at certain times in our lives. Because the more we are encouraged, the more we will continue to try things and fail, and then be able to improve and build up those neural pathways so we can become very proficient at whatever we used to fail at, right? That's the greatest way to do it. Encouragement is wonderful at getting somebody to continue on and keep working at it. True. But at some point, when you have the motivation and you don't need this motivational person anymore because you want to do it for yourself, now you need a coach with expertise who can look at what you're doing and provide you with very clear and concise corrections. So you can then work on the corrections of those things. That develops, and deliberately practice, that develops the myelin much more quickly and much more thickly. As when you are starting to make very clear, concise adjustments. Okay, so that helps your learning. The encouragement guy is not going to help you anymore. The guy with no experience that's the rah-rah guy, the rah-rah person is not going to help you anymore. Now you need somebody with technical expertise. And I worry sometimes when I see, this is probably going to get me in trouble with a lot of folks out there, but when we have super young golf coaches who have not done anything but played golf, and they're now trying to coach us on how to deliberately practice, they may not know how to specifically dissect and give you advice for what you're going through because they haven't really done it themselves, and communicating that to a person is very difficult. From somebody like Fred Shoemaker, you can talk to a guy like that who's been through the rigmarole and coached thousands and tens of thousands of people over the years who plays. That's another thing that I love about Fred Shoemaker. He's an amazing golfer. He's not just a coach, right? It's like going to college. I obviously went to a lot of school, and you had these, professors teaching you about, business, but they'd never ran a business, right? Everything they knew about business was going to McDonald's and buying something, or reading a textbook. And that was the level of their expertise. That was more difficult to learn that way. You had to really learn from the textbook and learn from them. But somebody who is a mentor or a coach who is a very good player and has also gone through and done all the coaching, that is the type of expertise that you need when you get to the point where motivation isn't a problem and you're just looking for the little bits, the nuggets, the direction that you need to work on tiny little things to make yourself more proficient and more talented. And talented can then be learned, as research has shown and as what was discussed in the talent code. So I hope that that's helpful. Putting can be something that you do right in your office, that you can be very deliberate at. I do not know what this thing is called. I bought this thing so long ago, but this thing is cool. There's a lot of different ones that you can use. There's a Callaway golf ball that's got the lines, right? And if you hit it funny, the lines wobble. You can just put a line on your ball. You see that on the tour all the time. And you can see when they struck the putt perfectly, the line stays pretty dark and solid all the way down. And when they've missed it a little bit, you kind of see it wobble. So a ball with a line on it will work. There's these things called the pill. They're like little slivers of golf balls, just the middle part of a golf ball. And if you hit it wrong, it spins or falls over. Those help as well. But get something to help you practice deliberately. I can promise you that if you do that, the neuro network in your brain will become more and more efficient, and you will become an expert putter, and putting will not be a problem for you. But this works for chipping, this works for drives, this works for irons, this works for all of it. This concept of deliberate practice should become part of your life as an amateur golfer, so you make sure that every minute you have to practice golf, and it's very limited, is done deliberately so you can get better and stay better, because it's all up here in your head and you're efficient as possible. So that's my Saturday message for today. Looking forward to going out and playing with my daughter and helping her out a little coaching, see if we can get her back up and going. She's, I'll tell you right now, her stance is too narrow. We're going to work on that. She's got this, her stance from when she was 5 hasn't changed, and she's in her teens now. So we need to widen that out a bit, and we'll work on that. I didn't want to correct it on the course while we were playing, but we'll work on that and get some things going. And I think her swing is looking just as smooth and beautiful as possible and powerful. She's picked up a lot of club head speed. So it'll be fun. Until next time, Aaron Stewart saying, remember, better data always means better golf. Enjoy yourself and practice deliberately. Thanks.